Hi, I'm Subhashini, and I'll be presenting a work on developing speech recognition models that can generalize and work out of the box for speakers with speech impairments. Google Research created a project called Euphonia to help improve speech recognition for individuals with speech disorders. It also developed Project Relate, which is an app to allow individuals with speech impairments personalize their on device model so that they can be better understood. In this work, we ask, can we get the default production speech recognition models to work well for speakers with impairments without the need for personalization? It would be great to have a good experience out of the box. The reasons for this is because personalization has several limitations. When we gathered feedback of Project Relate, a speech and language pathologist team identified some challenges to personalization. For some users, even recording speech prompts was physically demanding, and cognitive impairments could lead to incorrectly recorded prompts. Another common issue is that in many cases, diseases like ALS, which causes people's speech uh, to deteriorate, also declines in unpredictable ways. So, continuous recording is needed to mitigate this, and this has been discussed in previous work at ICASSP 2023. Further, personalization models trained on short and transactional phrases do not necessarily generalize very well for conversations. Conversations have more varied vocabulary, they're longer in length, and contains more named entities and rare words. So it might not be feasible to build personalization models in all settings. So the objectives here that we want to look at are if we can develop speaker independent ASR models, that's unpersonalized ASR models, which work well on disordered speech. We also want to generalize these models to regular conversational speech for for speakers with impairments. The ideal the third case is that the ideal best case scenario is to ensure that there is no regression on standard ASR speech benchmarks, so the same model can be used for all users to provide a good experience. So how do we do this? We consider the entire corpus of disordered speech data that's available for training and combine it along with standard speech dataset to train a single model that's compatible in all scenarios. Specifically, we learn how to weight the disordered speech data, which is out of distribution, and combine it well with the regular standard speech datasets. Next, we also gather a dataset for conversational speech to evaluate generalization. And finally, we investigate both large and on device models, training with both types of models with the same process to measure generalizability of our approach. The first set, we develop a dataset for speaker independent speech recognition on disordered speech. We're calling this the SAASR dataset. For evaluation and training of speaker independent ASR models, we split the full Euphonia prompted speech corpus into training, developmental, and validation sets so that there's no overlap in speaker and phrase between the training, val, and test splits. The test set consists of about 5,700 utterances from 200 speakers with different severities and types of impairments. The training set consists of about a million utterances from 1,200 speakers. The next thing that we did was gather a real conversation test set. This was compiled from trusted testers on real world usage of Euphonia's data collection app, and speech and language pathologists scrubbed the data of any PII, transcribed the speech, and verified them as organic usage in conversation. All speakers in the test set were removed from the SIASR training dataset. We have 29 speakers and 1,515 utterances in this conversational speech test set. When we look at the demographics of this, we see that the SIASR dataset is more varied in severity and etiology, while the real conversation dataset has speakers with more severe impairments. When looking at the same speakers, we can see that the real conversation is a harder use case even after personalization. So, what we're seeing here is the baseline performance of the personalized model and an unadapted ASR model, and the orange bar shows performance on conversational speech data set, and the blue bars show on prompted speech data set. The word error rate on conversational speech is much higher. This is primarily because conversational speech is much longer and has many words, which again you can see in this plot here. When we compare the performance at baseline, we use two models. The first is the baseline on device RNNT model, which has been trained on a wide range of standard speech, including conversational data. And this has high word error rates on both prompted speech and conversational speech um, on disordered speech dataset, on the disordered speech test sets. We also consider a baseline large model, which is the USM model. So this is the universal speech model, which is a 2 billion parameter CTC conformer model trained to be multilingual. It has significantly lower error rates compared to the RNNT model even before any adaptation. And this model was pre-trained on unlabeled and labeled speech data in over 100 languages. We then see if we can fine-tune both of these models and adapt them on disordered speech so that we weight the disordered speech along with the standard speech dataset. Here, we monitor performance of the models when we tune them with different weights for the disordered speech data mixture. On the x-axis is the weight assigned to the disordered speech data relative to the full training dataset that's available. And we see that a weight of zero point 0.1 seems to work well in our case. We then verify that the performance in standard speech datasets, that there is no regression on LibriSpeech or other multilingual test datasets. Overall, when we compare performance relative to the baseline performance, which have high word error rates, when we tune the model on the disordered speech dataset, it produces substantial gains for both the RNNT and the USM models adapted to the speaker independent disordered speech dataset. Further, when we compare it with the personalized model, which has a word error rate of 11.3, the adapted USM model covers 64% of the gap between the baseline and the personalized model, which is substantial. Let's see some examples where participants have provided permissions to share the data externally. So here you can see that compared to the baseline model performances, the fine-tuned model performance is quite large. So let's play one of the audio.
How many people hold a name before they get to that point?
So if you heard this, then you can see that the fine-tuned USM model gets recognition much closer to the original ground truth. In summary, we show that speaker-independent ASR models that are high-performing can be obtained and generalized to recognize disordered speech. Uh, we also know that it's important to weight the disordered speech data and monitor performance on several test sets. We want to ensure that there's no regression on standard ASR benchmarks, so the same model can be used for all users to provide a good experience. Finally, we were able to see that the fine-tuned model covers 64% of the gap towards personalization. Thank you.